Hi Stampers, this is Sandy from Stamped Impression, and today I'm going to give you a few tips about doing triple time stamping. I'm not really sure where the name came from, probably because we often do it on 3 layers of cardstock, but it doesn't matter how many layers you use, the technique is always the same. So here is a card I made, and the whole point of the triple time stamping is that you stamp on more than 1 layer of cardstock at a time. Very, very cool and quite fun. So this is a card we're making today, or I made earlier, and the thing that's really key to understand this technique is that every layer you stamp on, except for the card base, needs to have a mat around it that is 1/4 of an inch longer or 1/8 of an inch all around. So let me explain that. In this card I have my card base, and then I have the middle layer I'm stamping on, and then the top layer that I'm stamping on. Pretty straightforward. So let's see how it's done. When I make this card, I'm going to use vanilla for my middle layer so you could see what I'm doing, because it won't be easy to see on camera if I do it all in white. So I'm going to start with a little dab of adhesive, and I'm going to use my finger and tap it down a few times. I don't want it to be permanent. I just want it to hold the cardstock in place while I work on my card. So there's one layer. And in this card that I'm making, I'm having all my layers evenly centered on the card. So, and here's my middle layer. This is the most important step in making your cards. So if you can do that, you've got it made. I'm going to start with my sentiment, just stamping it off to make sure I get a good inking of my stamp. And there's my sentiment. Then I'm going to do my main flower. And so when you stamp, you really want to stamp on more than 1 layer at a time, bunches of the time. So the first flower was on all 3 layers, the next flower was only on 2. Then I'm going to add some more of another stamp in a contrasting color. I think I'll have them go that way and this way, and maybe a smidge over there. Okay, and finally, for a little bit of pop, I'm using a contrasting color. Don't worry about the sizes and the colors that I'm using. I'm going to have a PDF at the bottom of this video which shows you exactly what I used to make this card. Okay, that's it. That was the hard part. Now, what we're going to do through the magic of stamping is put it all together, but I'm going to do it with the right colors. So give me a minute, please. In my excitement to get this card done, I forgot to give you some of the tips. One of the things that's important is that when you stamp, you use a firm hand, but not a very hard hand. And the reason for the firmness is to ensure that the gaps between the layers of cardstock are very small. Because one layer is a little bit higher than the one below it, there will be a gap where the ink will not go. And see, there's another one here. And that's okay. That's why we use the mats to hide that. Anyways, so here is the card I stamped for you before, and magic of video, here is the one I did off camera. So here is what we do next. Remember I said you wanted your adhesive to be temporary, not permanent, and that's so you could pull it off. So I'm pulling off my top layer and just adding my adhesive and putting it on the mat that corresponds to that layer. And I'm using a silicone mat because could be some stray adhesive on the front of this guy, so I don't want it sticking to my work area and then, ripping the cardstock at the end. So here we go, and Okay, so this is what we have now. Don't worry that there's adhesive there. So before I put it together, I just want to make sure that my layers are kind of okay, that I don't turn one upside down. If I turn this upside down, it's not really quite the same effect on the card. You've got to have everything going in the correct direction, and then you can just put it together. So add my adhesive. Now, when you put it down, don't press your cardstock down right away. Kind of move it around and see that the layers from the lines from one layer match the ones below. Can you tell how it's going to come together? It's always fun because you never can tell until you put the mats on what it's going to look like. And here we go. Now that I see it's all put together properly, actually let me move this one a smidge. Now you can press your layers, and there's your card. All done. Easy peasy. So I hope this gave you some ideas for how you could try it. Now, one of the things that's really important, you don't always have to have your layers centered. You don't have to have them at the same angle. You can have more layers of cardstock. You know, you just fool around with it and see what you come up with. I'd love to hear from you, so if you get any, if you design any cards you want to share, please drop me a line. This is Sandy from Stamped Impression, and I'm just making my cards better one day at a time. Thanks for stopping by.